History has produced countless kings, generals, and conquerors. Most have been forgotten. But one man's story continues to captivate the world more than 2 centuries after his death. He was born an outsider on a small Mediterranean island. He rose to command the most powerful army Europe had ever seen. He defeated empires. He crowned himself emperor. He reshaped governments, rewrote laws, and forced the greatest nations on earth to unite against him. For years, he seemed untouchable. Then one campaign, one decision, one brutal winter changed everything. How does a man who appeared destined to rule Europe lose an empire almost overnight? Was Napoleon Bonaparte history's greatest military genius? Or was he ultimately defeated by the same confidence that made him unstoppable? Stay with us, because the answer is far more extraordinary than most history books reveal. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We enjoy seeing viewers from around the world, and if you enjoy true stories that changed history, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary. Napoleon Bonaparte was never supposed to become one of history's most influential figures. He wasn't born into a royal dynasty. He didn't inherit a throne. He wasn't surrounded by wealth or political power. He was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, only months after France took control of it. To many French citizens, Corsicans were outsiders, and young Napoleon quickly discovered what it felt like to be judged before anyone knew his abilities. When he attended military school in mainland France, classmates mocked his accent, ridiculed his modest background, and treated him as though he would never belong. For many people, constant rejection becomes a reason to quit. For Napoleon, it became fuel. Instead of seeking acceptance, he devoted himself to studying history, mathematics, artillery, and the campaigns of legendary commanders like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Hannibal. While others socialized, he prepared. While others celebrated, he planned. Long before Europe learned his name, Napoleon had already convinced himself that he was destined for something extraordinary. By the age of 24, he had become one of the youngest generals in French history. Europe still didn't know who he was. That would soon change forever. As Napoleon's reputation grew, France was descending into uncertainty. The French Revolution had overthrown the monarchy, but peace never followed. Governments rose and fell. Political violence became common. Ordinary citizens no longer trusted those in power, and many believed only a decisive leader could restore order. Napoleon seized that opportunity. In 1799, he helped overthrow the existing government and became first consul of France. 5 years later, he staged one of history's most symbolic moments inside Notre Dame Cathedral. With Pope Pius VII present to crown him, Napoleon reached forward, took the imperial crown into his own hands, and placed it on his own head. It was a powerful statement to France and to the world. His authority came from no king, no church, no noble family. He claimed that authority for himself. Victory followed victory. Austria, Prussia, Italy. Coalitions formed to stop him, yet time after time they were defeated by his speed, organization, and battlefield innovation. Military historians still analyze his campaigns because many of his tactical principles continue to influence modern military education. Yet Napoleon's influence extended far beyond warfare. His Napoleonic Code modernized legal systems, promoted equality before the law in many areas, protected property rights, and became the foundation for legal reforms across Europe and beyond. By the early 1800s, Napoleon appeared almost impossible to defeat. History, however, has a way of reminding even the greatest leaders that every empire has limits. In 1812, Napoleon made the decision that would define his legacy. He invaded Russia with the Grande Army, a force of more than 600,000 soldiers drawn from across Europe. It was one of the largest military expeditions ever assembled. Many of his advisors warned that the distances were enormous, the supply lines vulnerable, and the approaching winter dangerous. Napoleon believed speed would deliver another decisive victory. Instead, The Russians refused to fight on his terms. As they retreated, they destroyed crops, burned villages, abandoned cities, and denied the invading army the supplies it desperately needed. When Napoleon finally entered Moscow, he expected negotiations. Instead, he found an almost deserted city. Soon afterward, devastating fires consumed much of Moscow. Without food, shelter, or meaningful supplies, Napoleon had little choice but to retreat. Then winter arrived. Extreme cold, hunger, disease, exhaustion, and relentless attacks devastated the retreating army. By the time Napoleon returned to friendly territory, only a fraction of the Grande Armée remained. The campaign permanently weakened his empire and encouraged Europe's major powers to unite against him. The emperor who had once appeared unstoppable had become vulnerable. Defeat followed. Napoleon abdicated. He was exiled to the small island of Elba. For nearly every ruler in history, exile marked the end. Napoleon had other ideas. Less than a year later, he escaped Elba and returned to France. Soldiers sent to arrest him instead declared their loyalty and joined his cause. Without a major battle, Napoleon reclaimed power for what became known as the 100 Days. It remains one of history's most extraordinary political comebacks. But Europe refused to allow history to repeat itself. This time, the coalition would not stop until Napoleon was permanently defeated. Everything would come down to one battlefield: Waterloo. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon faced the combined forces of the Duke of Wellington and Field Marshal Blücher near the Belgian village of Waterloo. The battle lasted only one day. Its consequences shaped the next century of European history. When it ended, Napoleon's empire had collapsed for the final time. He surrendered and was sent into exile on the remote Atlantic island of St. Helena, thousands of miles from the battlefields that had made him famous. He died there in 1821. Yet Napoleon's story did not end with his death. Military academies continue to study his campaigns. Law schools examine the Napoleonic Code. Historians continue debating whether he was a liberator, a reformer, a dictator, or all three. Perhaps that debate is exactly why his story still fascinates us today. His brilliance built an empire. His confidence inspired millions. But his greatest strength may also have become his greatest weakness. So here's the question. Was Napoleon ultimately defeated by the Russian winter, or by his own belief that he could never lose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this documentary changed the way you see one of history's most influential figures, subscribe for more true stories of legendary leaders, forgotten empires, and world-changing moments. Because sometimes, the most incredible stories are the ones history almost leaves behind.